Is your bowl of spinach going to kill you? Is kale out to wreck your life? Are those green smoothies full of, what are they full of again? Aflatoxins, oxalates, I forget all the different things. But is that going to ruin your life and your health? The answer to this is nuanced. And that's why you have so much confusion. And that's why there's so much dogma. Because like everything in diet and nutrition, or really even life at this point, is somewhere in the middle. Aristotle called it the golden mean. So where do plants fit into the natural human diet? And can plants fit into a carnivore diet or an animal-based diet? I'm going to give you my thoughts today on what I've learned about plants, where I'm at with plants, my relationship to them, and how you can maybe use some of these ideas to figure that out for yourself as well. The first thing that you need to know about plants is, as it goes with everything, there's a continuum. There are the good, the bad, and the ugly. Raw things in nature will kill you. You go outside and eat a few plants, raw grass or whatever, and some twigs and leaves, and you'll probably die, actually. And on the food spectrum, there are, every bit of the way. Like you have some that are more toxic, that are less toxic, some that have to be cooked, some that have to be soaked and fermented, etc. So when you have a spectrum, there are certain plants that I believe are absolutely bad for you and that most people just shouldn't eat. And there are certain plants that might have a positive health benefit. And like I say might because we still don't know. I think if we look at enough people that eat plants on a regular basis and that can live long lives, I think there's enough kind of data to say that yes, plants can be included in a natural human diet, and most people, or let's say a large majority of the population, can do just fine on them. And then you have plants in the middle. Maybe this plant doesn't affect you negatively. Maybe it's neutral. Maybe it's slightly positive. And depending on the person, each plant is going to fall somewhere different on that spectrum. Before we get into how you can maybe test this for yourself, I do need to say one thing. Plants are not as good for you as animals. Animals are the optimal human food, healthy animals specifically. And plants are never going to come close. Plants are never going to be as good for you as animals, right? Until maybe science changes that or something. So that is the first principle. Humans, our evolution, all the things that you can go into, all point to the fact that meat, animal foods, right? And sometimes raw, sometimes cooked, is the optimal human food. It's what allowed our brains to grow big. So this puts all plants, every single plant in the plant kingdom, in a tier 2 bucket, under animals at the top. Now, within that tier 2 bucket, you can have some that really should be in a tier 3 bucket that you shouldn't eat at all. Like I said, continuum, spectrum, etc. Now, with that said, I guarantee you that every single one of your ancestors, my ancestors, ate plants, at least sometimes. I don't think we can say at all that there were very many hunter-gatherers that would have gone their whole lives without consuming plants. And this is where it gets murky. This is where it gets nuanced, right? Because it's how much, it's which plants, were they hybridized? Obviously not. Before we had agriculture, most plants, most fruits, other things in the wild are a fraction of what they are today, or had a fraction of the sugar or a fraction of the sweetness, etc. Even the produce we consume today has been bred to be addicting, right? If you have really sweet apple or berries or watermelon or things like this, and in the wild, they're fibrous or tough to chew, they're not very flavorful, why would our ancestors ever even wasted their time with that? Picking through seeds and fibers, things that they couldn't eat and spitting it out, and basically expending a lot of energy to get a little bit of nutrition from, which is the case in really the entire plant kingdom, when there's so much abundance nutrition to be found in the animal kingdom. I mean, at this point, that's basically a rhetorical question. To me, it's answered. So that's another thing to keep in mind. I'm actually going to do a video on the differences between wild foods and modern foods. You see some people that are in kind of the fitness space. There's one account in particular that talks about like,
if somebody says fruit is bad, ignore them, run, or whatever.
They're very dogmatic about that. It's so faulty. When you really dive into looking at like what a wild avocado used to look like and what our modern avocados look like today, or the same thing for anything, right? A lot of fruit didn't even exist in the wild. Corn is a man-made invention from Teo Sinente. It didn't even exist. And it can't reproduce on its own. It's not a natural thing, which is why it strip mines the planet and it ruins your health. So without going into that, let's get back to plants real quick. When you do a 100% strict carnivore diet, and you do that for, like, say, 60 days, you let your body adapt, you let your gut microbiome change and kind of adapt, you deal with all the transition stuff that you will have to deal with, then you want to introduce some plants in here and there strategically so that you can build your spectrum for your health. Because like I said, your spectrum of what plants affect you on this spectrum from good, bad, and ugly is going to depend on you. And the only way you're gonna figure that out is if you first remove a lot of that and then slowly, ideally one at a time, reintroduce it. This is actually what I think most people that are doing carnivore should do. Unless you have a severe autoimmune sensitivity to certain things or some other health issues that would make it so you shouldn't eat plants at all, unless that's you, you should, I think, because for enjoyment, for flexibility, etc., I think you should try to find what bucket of plants, and it might be one or two, it doesn't have to be a ton of them, right? It's not all of them, it's not all or nothing here at all. I think you should try to find a few of the plants that you can add into your diet, or let's say spices or condiments or things like that, to make your diet a little bit more exciting and let's say a little less rigid. I've been a self-proclaimed foodie for a long time. I love eating at really nice restaurants. I love classically prepared dishes, and I love plants in that context. Usually when I cook plants at home, I just don't have the skills to make it taste good enough, so I don't really want to eat them. And so that's why carnivore made so much sense to me, because my biology's been telling me that plants aren't really up to snuff anyways, and I never really crave them. But when I go to a restaurant, it's completely different, right? Completely different discussion. I want to know for my life, for the enjoyment factor, for the flexibility factor, I want to know what plants I can fit into my diet here and there strategically. Maybe it's through a cheat meal. Maybe it's because I'm traveling and I go to this restaurant that was on chef's table and I'm definitely going to experience the full experience because that's definitely on my bucket list. I need to know for myself. And saying all plants are bad or good or whatever, or I think some of the hyped up kind of plant toxin stuff is a little overblown for a lot of people. It's completely on point for a small percentage of people, and is somewhere in the middle for everyone else. And that's why figuring it out for yourself, as much as I hate that advice, as much as I hate the
what works for you
dogma advice you see in nutrition advice that basically leads people to not having to feel bad for their diet, right? I can't stand that. But when you're doing it this way, within the confines of a carnivore diet and a removal diet and an elimination diet and a slowly adding back in to figure out what your body responds to, that's when the advice is golden. This is how I'm thinking about plants right now, and how I think all of us can figure out how to include certain plants in our diet. I know there's a lot of nuance here, and again, humans, they love to put things in a little box over here of good, or a little box over here of bad, or a little box over here of white, and a little box over here of black. For you, understanding which plants affect you and where they fall in that spectrum, and building kind of a library of that understanding, nobody is going to be able to tell you what that is. No test, no book, no podcast, no YouTuber, no expert. Nobody is going to be able to tell you that better than you can figure out for yourself. And that's what I recommend you do. If that's not of interest to you, if you want a simple meal plan that's just very basic and you just want to eat steak every day and maybe some seafood here and there and some sardines, and that just works for you, then I'm going to say that that's great. And you should do that. I don't think there's a need for plants. In fact, I think at this point we understand there is not a biological need for plants, just like there's not a biological need for carbs or whatever. But there are times when carbs and maybe even plants can have a benefit in certain ways. Sometimes they're biological benefits, and sometimes they're just mental benefits because you want to enjoy that nice restaurant you're going to. That's it for today's video. Let me know in the comments below. Have you figured out what plants your body can tolerate? Are you incorporating them into your diet? Or are you just going straight cold turkey, no plants ever again? I'm interested to hear either way.